Please be seated now. Our service will begin shortly. We ask that you please silence your cell phones. Thank you. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the South Jersey Shore. We are a welcoming and inclusive faith community. Our service is open to all, visitors, friends, and members. Whether you are single, partnered, or in a family of any type, we welcome you. Whether you are here in the sanctuary with us, watching live online, or on demand, may our time together be one of learning and celebration. To those joining us virtually, we welcome your comments as well as your joys and sorrows on that platform. Please remember that this video will be on the internet, so do not share information that is best kept private. My name is Ron Hutchison, and I'm your worship associate this morning. I'm a member of this congregation, and I currently serve on the grounds committee, mostly mowing the path that's out there once a year. Our worship service today is led by Meredith, Massey, and Jason Simmons, the owners and operators of Finn Place Farm in Hamilton. Video of the service will be available on our YouTube channel later today. If you care to tweet during today's service, you can use the hashtag UUCSJS. Welcome to worship. Our opening words today are credited to an anonymous author. It's called Yesterday's Farm. It was late in August, a hot summer day. The bright sun was setting. I had an hour to play. So I walked in the woods and followed the stream, taking time to make time for myself, just to dream. I came to an old cabin with a garden and a barn, a memory of a yesterday when life held more charm. Where gardens was planted right out the back door, and apples and berries went into a cellar store. I thought while the old days was more modern about things, like chopping their own heat and getting water from springs. No bills for utilities, no meters to read, when families together got their groceries from seed. I felt peaceful and safe as I watched the sun going down. I wish I could go back, bring them the old days back around, to do it the old way and have all the charm that I felt when I stumbled upon yesterday's farm. Our child slater today is Meredith and Jason.
Please join me in reading the child's lighting words from Edna St. Vincent Millay, printed in your order of service. By woods this autumn day, that ache and sag and all but cry for color. World, I cannot get close enough. None of us can ever forget the world close enough. For all that we linger in valleys or drive into the ocean, our preoccupations keep us always a little distant. Perhaps, but don't stop trying. Perhaps you cannot ever get the world close enough. Yet it remains as that best we can.
Do 1002, comfort me. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul.
We will now light the religious education lantern. We light this lantern for our children and youth and for us, celebrating the flame of faith lighted in each of us, honoring the light each of us brings into the world, rejoicing in the community that we create together. The children will not be coming among you to help collection for the gifts for the Community Food Bank of New Jersey, the Coalition Against Rape and Abuse, and local animal shelters. You're welcome to bring your donations to the basket near the rear door when you exit. Children's recessional.
good to meet a brand new day. Learn to light the light within you as we send you on your way.
A book is provided in the foyer in which you are invited to write whatever joys and sorrows you have as you enter. I will now read what you would share. Joy being here with you all, and a heart symbol. Concern, my pops and my sister, give them healing, thanks from Gina. And healing for father-in-law and son. During the piano interlude, we invite you to savor some quiet time together. You may wish to drop a pebble in the communal water or to place a stone in the center of the chalice, symbolizing our shared experience of the joys and concerns in our lives.
It's going to be a guitar interlude today.
It's what?
It's going to be a guitar
Oh,
interlude.
guitar. Okay.
It's all good.
Let us be in the spirit of prayer. Blessed and holy creation, universe of wonder, mystery beyond definition, we share today our joys and sorrows, placing stones that make ripples in the water and gentle sounds in our chalice. Our hearts are touched by this shared ritual, and we are connected. We pray for those who are apart from us, whether by distance, time, or conflict unresolved. We pray for those who thirst, whether for water, dignity, or justice. We pray for our small, blue, fragile planet. We offer all of these and those joys and sorrows that remain unspoken in our hearts into the care of the universe. May our joys be multiplied and our sorrows diminished in the sharing. Amen.
Number 391, voice still in the song. Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing in darkened rain, sorrow and pain, still you remain. Calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing.
Let there be an offering to sustain and strengthen this place, which is sacred to so many of us, a community of memory and of hope, for we are now the keepers of the dream. If this is your first time visiting with us today, feel free to let the basket pass as your presence is gift enough. You are encouraged to text a donation to 609-293-4495, or if you're using the electronic order of service, follow the link to donate online. For those of you that are participating online, please visit uucsjs.org and click on the yellow donate button for ways to donate. The gifts of the congregation will be most gratefully received. Thank you. Our reading today is from permaculture pioneer Robin Francis, an Australian permaculture figure, designer, educator, presenter, innovator, and founder of Permaculture College Australia. At the end of the reading, we will enter into a time of silent contemplation, concluded by ringing of the bell. Francis writes, reclaiming our place in nature as Earth stewards, our sense of place, of belonging to the Earth, permaculture fosters respect for life and its complexity, awareness of the consequences of our action, and accepting responsibilities for how we meet our needs. Permaculture draws from the wisdoms of traditional and indigenous cultures and weaves this with our contemporary knowledge of ecology, earth science, and technology to create abundance, regenerate the land, and build resilient communities. Human creativity, passion, and innovation shapes the diverse ways that people apply permaculture and adapt it to local resources, climate, and cultural context. Every system is unique. Permaculture empowers us in a practical way to explore and realize our potential as positive agents of change, individually and collectively. Living with the challenges of the Anthropocene, permaculture provides a way forward to make our human impact meaningful, to restore the balance by being conscious consumers, to live within the Earth's biocapacity and respect our interdependence with all life. Permaculture is dancing with nature, and nature leads the dance.
I'd like to invite you to imagine for a moment with me, if you will. You step out onto 9 acres of farmland after getting home from working a full 8-hour shift. You take a breath of fresh air before walking the grounds to check on everything. The orchard beds are filled with weeds. Pigs need more water. The tractor is parked in the middle of the field and the ducks are in need of a feeding. You hear a dog bark in the distance and you walk over to investigate, only to find that half of your flock of 50 chickens has somehow gotten loose. You remind yourself as you collect them one by one that the berry bushes out front need watering, the eggs need collecting, And 5 people are coming over the next couple of hours to purchase the honey, which has not yet been poured into jars. As you turn to get started on this new list of chores, you realize there's only 15 minutes until dark. Sighing, you go back inside to sit down and search Realtor.com for condos in Ocean City, wondering why you ever thought this was a good idea. Like all nightmares, this began as a beautiful dream. You glance up from the glow of your phone and notice it started to rain. Panic sets in. The animals are all outside, the high tunnels are open, all the plants you worked hard to plant are at risk of being ripped from the earth by the heavy wind. You run outside into the pitch black, your clothes quickly becoming drenched, your boots filling with mud, your rain hat being ripped from your head. You ask yourself again, why did I do this? What's the point? It feels like way more trouble than it's worth. Then you look to your left. Your oldest child is running alongside you wearing nothing but her PJs. She's been in her room all day, but she heard the rain and saw you run outside and came to help. Together you close up the high tunnels and get the animals put up. When you head back to the house, you see your other children waiting on the porch, eager to hear about the adventure, empathizing with the wet farm animals, inquiring as to their condition. And that is why you do it. At least, that's why I did it. I wanted my children to be connected to the environment and to their food. I wanted them to care. I wanted them to understand the relationship between the earth, their family, and their bodies. That's why we bought our farm out in Hamilton. This dream was why we chose to name our farm Thin Place Farm. I first heard the concept of a thin place while attending a UU Sunday service in Fort Collins, Colorado with my children. Surprisingly, for the very first time in my life, in a strange town full of strangers, my children went down to RA without me. I was in shock, but I didn't question it. I just ran before they changed their minds. The sermon that day happened to be about thin places. As the Celtic saying goes, heaven and earth are only 3 feet apart, but in thin places, that distance is even shorter. According to this belief, a thin place is a place where we become our more essential selves. It's a place we feel at peace. A person's thin place could be the tennis court or behind a set of drums. At the end of the service, the minister gave everyone a piece of sea glass and asked us to imagine our thin place. I realized in that moment why I was meant to hear this service. The property we had just bought in Hamilton to build our farm was our thin place. Around 12,000 years ago, our ancestors, hunters and gatherers in modern-day Israel, Iraq, and Syria, tried their hand at farming. Societies, as we understand them, formed around these farms. The fertile lands meant that people no longer had to be nomadic if they wanted to eat. They had the power to grow enough food that travel was unnecessary. Since people could now settle in one place, houses were built and people met. People had children and they taught their children how to farm, and those children had children and taught their children how to farm, and so on until there was the steam train and the cotton gin and global warming. That is to say, out of farming, society and the relationships within it were born. Teaching my children the simple fact of our past was important to me. Modern society, as we understand it, stemmed from the relationships demanded by farm and community. Most people now get everything they need from a store. These things ultimately come from systems that we no longer understand. We do not have to have any connection to the earth, not for medicine, materials, food, or shelter. I have students that refuse to eat a raspberry growing in the school garden because it didn't come from the grocery store. It's foreign to them and scary. How could I become more connected into today's world? I had grown some of my own food, but it had been generations since someone in my family had raised, grown, and made what they needed. Of course, I would buy a farm. We quickly realized if this crazy idea was going to succeed, it had to be much bigger than us. We knew that given our monetary constraints, both adults would still have to work full-time jobs outside the farm. and the children would still have to go to school. We would need to grow mostly perennial plants that could just be maintained instead of planted new each year. That was okay. Our ancestors did not exist in a vacuum. They had to have intimate relationships with the earth, with their community, and with each other. They had to understand and foster the interdependent web of life and all its connections and complexities. We were overwhelmed and didn't know where to start. But in our frantic Google searching, because what else do you do when you don't know the answer? To our surprise, a framework like this already existed, developed in Australia in the 1970s by Bill Molson and David Holbrook, permaculture. Permaculture is not just a blueprint for sustainable agriculture, but a blueprint for the way we can live our lives. Consciously designed landscapes which mimic the patterns and relationships found in nature, while yielding an abundance of food, fiber, and energy for provision of local needs. People, their buildings, and the ways in which they organize themselves are central to permaculture. The original permaculture vision of permanent or sustainable agriculture has evolved to one of permanent or sustainable culture. 12 design principles and 3 ethical spheres to guide you, much like Unitarian Universalism with our 7 principles. With this new knowledge, we were off. Permaculture ethics are organized into 3 main categories: earth care, rebuilding nature's capital; people care, nurturing self, kin, and community; and fair share, setting limits to consumption and reproduction and redistributing surplus. And although all 12 design principles are essential, and I highly suggest, if you are at all interested, that you explore them on your own, I want to highlight 4 that helped us begin this journey. For as the proverb says, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. First, observe and interact. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. This is akin to being the listener in our relationships with people. Observe. Really observe. There are no blank slates. What do you see, hear, smell, and taste at all times of the year? And how can that information be used to make decisions about how to design your land, large or small? We spent a year just observing before we did much of anything. Kind of like when planners observe and put the sidewalks where people actually walk instead of where they think they would look nice. Second, use small and slow solutions. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. Slow and steady wins the race. After all of our observations and planning, we were ready to jump in, but we had to remind ourselves to start small. We decided to start with 2 things that would help us obtain a yield. Another important principle: you can't work on an empty stomach. We would see how it went while we continued to plan. We started with a beehive, since I had taken a beekeeper's course the year before and had already built a hive, along with some chickens. We would hopefully have honey and eggs and be on our way. As we continued learning, observing, problem solving, and working on building relationships, we embraced the principle of integrate rather than segregate. Each thing on the farm has many functions, and each function is supported by many things, an interdependent web. We now had bees, and those bees provided honey, but they also provided pollination. Those were the outputs. What inputs did they need? Well, they needed things to pollinate. We could make sure some of those things we planted for the bees to pollinate were things we could eat, or things that encouraged other beneficial insects as well. We also had chickens. The chickens provided eggs, meat, fertilizer, and pest management through the insects they ate. What did they need? They needed space and adequate food and water. Could we plant pasture for them and collect rainwater? Our small solutions naturally have increased our scope by slowly increasing our connections. Everything is connected. I have to say it again. Everything is connected. Our continued existence is inextricably bound to our relationship with the earth and everything in it. I feel that collectively, our relationship with the earth is broken. I've been trying to repair this relationship my entire life. My peace is found in nature. The moon does strange things to me. As a kid, I begged my dad to let me have an enormous garden, ask any of the friends who were stuck helping me weed it before I was allowed to go out on Friday night. I went to school for forestry so I could spend my career outside. I ran for political office with an environmental platform, and when I had children, I wanted them to share my passions. I felt like our lack of connection was at the core of our broken relationship. David Holcomb writes in his book Retro Suburbia, permaculture is also a global movement of individuals, groups, and networks working to create the world we want by providing for our needs and organizing our lives in harmony with nature. The movement is active in the most privileged and the most destitute communities and countries. Permaculture may be Australia's most significant export for humanity facing a world of limits. This spoke not only to my desire for self-sufficiency, but also to my sense of obligation to be an environmental activist. I can have both in a more meaningful and fulfilling way. He speaks about permaculture as a way to save the world. How do we create the world we want instead of trying to stop the world we don't want? Most people think about trying to change public policies. That's an old way of changing the world. The new way, changing how you live your life, is arguably the most powerful thing we can do. Following permaculture principles that benefit yourself as well as the earth and community is a very motivating example. It entices others to follow, benefiting them and changing the world for the better in the process. This can be more motivating than other types of environmental activism. Simple, small changes that are easy to copy and usually don't need permits or funding. These small changes, when adapted by many, represent a real threat to a lot of the power structures in society. So this self-reliance stuff associated with permaculture is actually pretty subversive. It's very hard for the powers that be to stop it if it can be done at home by anyone. When you get a lot of people doing the same things, you come from a place of power to get things changed through autonomy instead of through shouting loudly, which doesn't really work. This is our 4th year of this adventure. We're now a certified organic permaculture farm. We've tried our hand at many things. We have kept chickens, ducks, guinea fowl, pigs, bees, mealworms, red wigglers, tilapia, goats, livestock guardian dogs, and sheep. We have a diverse permaculture orchard with fruits, nuts, and berries. We grow mushrooms, asparagus, garlic, tomatoes, herbs, and various other crops. We collect red maple sap and make maple syrup. When we have a problem, we try to find a solution, hopefully every move getting us closer to a natural system. Everything that we have has many purposes. We have maintained and cultivated the relationships that work for our set of circumstances. We have come a long way, but still have so much to learn. Despite the challenges, we feel like we're well on our way to accomplishing our goals. Our children know where food comes from and how much work goes into it. They've had the opportunity to be intimately connected to the whole process. They've surprised us with their maturity and understanding of the circle of life and their place in it. Our daughter Ember has a special relationship with her surroundings and now has a new goal of only eating things we grow, harvest, or raise. She sees what happens when the whole system is not taken into consideration and has a newfound passion for environmentalism. Our son Walker's appreciation does not include the same service, but he would rather be outside more than anywhere else. As he heads off into the woods, usually without clothes or shoes, but always with his trusty stick, he shouts to me, "Bye, Mom. I'm going to try to figure out how to survive with just this stick. See you later." Rhea, my 20-year-old, well, most days I feel like she does not share my passions, values, or beliefs. Like somehow, nothing rubbed off at all. But time and time again, she surprises me by showing me that she is, in fact, my child. Like the time I inquired about her recent breakup, and she told me it was because he didn't like just walking in the woods. Or when I expressed to her my doubts about being able to effectively share this sermon with you, would anyone really understand my why? She immediately questioned my hesitation, reminding me of all the once-in-a-lifetime experiences we had on the farm, moments of frustration, or as some would call it, opportunities for growth. As she took me down the path of farm memory lane, I felt her walking with me, not ahead, not behind, We're right there, living each moment together, mother and daughter. This connection does not end with my immediate family. Jason's mother, entering her next season of life, also joined us on this adventure. She has provided my family with a direct link to their past, and interestingly enough, our present. As a young woman, she married into a farming family, quickly learning that reliance on the earth was necessary for survival. She shares her fond memories, experiences, and knowledge. I'm just thankful that I didn't need to milk a cow at dawn while 8 months pregnant in the middle of the winter. After Jason's mother, his estranged brother was desperately seeking a sense of belonging and acceptance, and also found refuge on our farm. His responsibilities as a caretaker to the plants and animals have provided him a stable and non-judgmental environment to cultivate healthy relationships. This farm has allowed him to begin his own journey of healing. Jason and I have found a permaculture community, the Greater Hamilton Permaculture Club, that works together to support its members with their goals. They've helped us raise our unheated greenhouse, construct fencing, and plant, harvest, and process various crops. Projects on other members' properties have taught and inspired us. We've relished the relationships we've formed with local businesses, providing ingredients to the local bakery and breweries, and the many customers that support us. We provide for, learn from, and motivate each other. In addition, the shared day-to-day struggle has brought us closer to each other. Our relationship with the earth is broken. It is broken, but I think we can fix it. This pandemic seems to have activated many people's primal roots. Seed companies were sold out. Chicks and ducklings were impossible to find. The relocalization process was occurring. People were staying closer to home and starting to do things for themselves in their home again and with their neighbors. The importance of a local food supply was apparent. In the past year, I've met so many people living in suburbia who are transforming their small lots into something amazing. I challenge you, no matter your living arrangement, to start observing and doing small things to obtain some kind of yield. When you use something, think about where it actually came from, and if it is something we could work together to get or make locally. In 1949, Aldo Leopold wrote in his book, A Sand County Almanac, civilization has so cluttered this elemental man-earth relationship with gadgets and middlemen that awareness of it is growing dim. We fancy that industry supports us, forgetting what supports industry. This has never been more true than today. These relationships with the earth, community, and each other are the vital connections between us that make everything possible. Our interdependent web. At the end of the year on our farm, we barely break even, not counting any payment for our time. But that's not why we do it. To some, it may seem like we're just working all the time, but we don't feel that way. It's a different way of thinking about life. This way of life is our preferred choice. Through this shared struggle and service comes spiritual fulfillment. When it comes down to it, farming is what we would rather be doing. All the stress comes from the other outside obligations to keep us away from the farm. This is where we feel connected. This is where we feel needed and useful. This is where we feel most whole. This is truly our thin place. We can't say it's not hard, and we don't think about giving up every day. But it makes the peach taste that much sweeter, and that has made all the difference. Amen. Please rise now, embody your spirit, and join in singing our closing hymn, number 100, I've Got Peace Like a River. Words and music, Marvin B. Wright.
Inspired by Meredith and what you spoke of, I would like for us to all sing. The first verse is, I've got food from my garden. All right? That's what the first verse we're going to do.
The single greatest lesson the garden teaches is that our relationship to the planet need not be zero-sum, and that as long as the sun still shines and people still can plan and plant, think and do, we can, if we bother to try, find ways to provide for ourselves without diminishing the world. Let us read the words together for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth or the warmth of community or the fire